Hey guys, so it's Steve Hall here from Revive Stronger, as I'm sure you're all more than aware. And I'm excited again to bring another guest to the channel. This time is Scott Tousignant, who is another bodybuilder, also a physique coach, and is a owner of Metabolic Masterpiece website with some fantastic articles and some fantastic products on there as well. And I really like Scott because he really views training as an art and the body as the artwork, per se. And that's exactly what bodybuilding is all about. A lot of people talk about bodybuilding as being a sport. Some people argue it's not. And I've always viewed it as kind of a mix between an art and a sport. And I think Scott has a really, really interesting view to it. So if Scott just wants to say a little bit about his background, how he got into bodybuilding, I think from what I've seen, Scott is very similar to me in that we weren't necessarily made for the sport, but we absolutely love it. So without further ado, go for it, Scott.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for the introduction. Really happy to be here. And yeah, definitely a topic I'm very passionate about. Been passionate about bodybuilding since I was like 14. Started training at 14 in my parents' basement. Arnold and Stallone were and Jean-Claude Van Damme back then. I'm 40 years old today, so it's been a little while since that point. But always inspired by the classic physiques, like a Frank Zane type physique. I'm a smaller guy myself, so I had a tougher time resonating with Arnold. Enjoyed his character and persona and everything, but seeing some of the bigger, massive guys and the guys who dominated the magazines, just it's tough for me being a smaller guy, less role models there. But seeing Stallone and hearing that, I think it was a Rocky IV, and he was all cut up for that, only weighing around 170 pounds. I thought, you know what, he's got a little bit more of a physique that I could kind of aspire for. And Jean-Claude Van Damme, again, not a big guy. So those guys were kind of my role models back then, and knew I wanted to get into fitness at some point. Actually, at 14, I told my best friend and my training partner at the time that I would own a health club when I was older. And sure enough, I did. That was one of my aspiring goals. So that passion led me to getting a degree in human kinetics, kinesiology. So that was here in Windsor, Ontario, a 4-year degree there. And then immediately out of there, got right into personal training, working at a club. And then a year later, I owned my own personal training studio for 4 years. And definitely a lot of work I wasn't prepared for. I thought it was going to be all this freedom and everything, and ended up really consuming me, especially when I had a young family to help support. And so when I was nearing the end of owning my health club, that's when I started recognizing some online stuff. First newsletter I ever signed up to was Tom Venuto, his Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle site, and built up a good relationship with them. Is the first ebook I ever purchased. So that was like back in 2004, 2005. And by 2006, I had my own website running, and that's kind of where my whole online coaching began. And I realized here I was training. It was so much work to train so few people and get the reward of seeing so few people transform in front of you. I thought, man, this online thing, there's really something to it. I can reach so many more people. So it's really been about 10 years that I've been in this online world and gone through some transformations here and there, like different websites, and really kind of coming to my own. And it's really only been the past 5-6 years where I've really kind of gone back to my bodybuilding roots. I really got caught up in kind of the mainstream quick burst workout type stuff. And I guess it kind of applied to me at the time because I was a busy parent. I really didn't have a lot of time to train. So I kind of went through that phase. And then 5-6 years ago, I was like, my kids are growing up, and I really missed those bodybuilding days. And it really was Tom Venuto who kind of switched things around for me. Came and visited me here, and we did a workout together. I'm like, oh, have I been missing out? And it fired up my inspiration for bodybuilding, and I started pulling up my old books, Steve Reeves, the Classic Physique, and Vince Garanda, all his stuff, and I just got consumed with it. So it's funny because I've been at this since '99, but it's really been the past 5-6 years where I feel like I've learned so much more during this time period. and eager, hungry to learn more and more. And I've never had more fun training at the same time, never felt better. At 40 years old, it's exciting. I keep looking ahead and going, I can't wait to see what I'm like at 50 years old. So it's been a fun time. That was a long kind of response to a little bit about my background, but I love this.
It's interesting to hear kind of I think it's always interesting to hear where people came from in terms of their inspiration and where they want to go forward. And I love talking history. I've been training longer than myself because I think we can learn so much from our past, and I know how much I've learned from my past and my mistakes. So to look to someone who's been training for so many years and everything they could have learned, I love it. And that's part of the reason I got you on, and part of the reason I think you probably have come out with some really interesting stuff on social media, on your podcast as well. It's been fantastic. And happy birthday. I didn't realize today was your birthday.
Today's not my birthday.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were.
But thanks. It's my half
I heard
birthday,
40
maybe.
today.
40. I'm 40 now. Yeah, I'll be turn 40 this year. It's been a fun, exciting year. But yeah, good times. I've been looking forward to 40 for a long time, just because I have so many role models who are a little bit older than me, and just seeing like, it seems like between 40 and 50 is like the prime time for lifting. Like, you got the muscle maturity, you're training a lot smarter. I just see guys improving so much between 40 and 50, even like beyond. I happen to train with 3 guys who are all above 50, and seeing how they're still able to progress fires me up every single time I'm training with them. It's good fun.
I think that links really well to the topic that we're actually going to cover. And I think you've already touched on it, in that when you get smarter with your training, even in myself, I know this to be true. I trained for like 5 years, and the gains as they were, I didn't really see any progress. And something that probably limited me then, and something I definitely use now, is intelligent use of kind of muscle confusion, which isn't really what we're actually going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about kind of purposefully varying our training to keep kind of growth going, because there is kind of the body does adapt to what you give it. And even if you can keep trying to push it to do things, but if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, I'm no doubt you've seen this yourself, Scott, and I've definitely experienced it. The body just doesn't want to adapt anymore, and it gets very efficient at not adapting, at doing things. So people often would probably see this with kind of, you do the same task and it gets easier and easier and easier. That's because the body gets very good at adapting it, but that's not necessarily good all the time for gaining muscle. So the topic today is how to use muscle confusion to spur gains. So traditionally, people think of muscle confusion as kind of going into the gym and doing something completely different that they've never done before, to trick the body, to trick your muscles. And obviously, it's not a great idea, because you have to have periods of time of progressively overloading things. So if you keep changing things, it becomes very difficult to actually progress with anything. If you go from a squat to a front squat to a leg press, and you keep changing the reps, the sets, the intensities, you're going to find yourself just getting nowhere, because you are confused. Your whole body will be all over the place. You won't know where you're going. Is that how you see muscle confusion, kind of the wrong way to do it, traditionally known as?
Absolutely. And I think you brought up a great point there. And I mean, doing the same thing over and over and over again, your body adapts to it. But the whole purpose of growing is that you do want your body to adapt to something. You want to get some sort of structure in place, like you said, that you can progress on, but you want to try your body to adapt to that stimulus. And as it's adapting, it's growing. That's exactly what it's doing. It's growing as you're adapting, but you can only take it so long before you need to confuse the muscles to provide some sort of new stimulus that it can adapt to. So going into the gym blindly all the time and just always changing things up, I think it's silly, because you don't give your body that opportunity to adapt to a certain protocol, to like I said, progress on it, to overload your muscles with that structure in place. So and how we all adapt to to certain programs is a little bit different. I think a lot of times you could probably go 6, 8, even 12 weeks on the same kind of plan and continue to progress and adapt before you completely adapt to it. But personally for me, I like to change it every 4 weeks. I like to set a structure in place. That first week is kind of that little honeymoon period where I'm trying to get a feel for the plan that I have there. I might be changing some of the exercise techniques, and I have to kind of find the right weight for that technique. And there's oftentimes a lot of soreness that comes along with that initial shock, and then the soreness dissipates each progressive week after that. But I'll progress on it for 3 weeks, and then the 4th week is kind of a bit of a maintenance. I may sometimes occasionally do the 5th week may be a bit of a deload on that program, but for the most part, I find 4 weeks is solid for me, and my enthusiasm to confuse my muscles again comes in. It's not as much confusing the muscle. I usually change every 4 weeks. I know it could continue to progress on a plan, but my enthusiasm for training goes through the roof when I'm changing it after 4 weeks. It keeps me pushing as hard as I can, intelligently.
That's really interesting, because I was going to actually ask, how often do you vary your programs? And we'll come on to how we might attack varying them. But it's good to hear that you, rather than, a lot of people do go with the approach of continually doing the same thing until they can't progress any further. But I kind of feel like when you get to that point, you could have changed it a bit sooner and seen better progress. At least my understanding, and I really look up to Mike Israetel and the way they do it at Renaissance Periodization, and he's very much like yourself. He likes to see movements changed or something varied every 4 to 6 weeks. And I guess that 4 to 6 weeks, you could do it depending how you're progressing. And it might depend on various intensities and things, but I'm very much the same. I kind of call it like a foundation week or a base week. First, something slightly different. It might be a slightly heavier weight. It might be a slightly different movement, and you're just getting used to things. And I always see people, they go into their first week of training, it's all new, they smash it, and the DOMS, the delayed onset muscle soreness that they get, is horrific. The next week of training, they basically have to deload, and where was the progressive overload is completely gone. And we all know progressive overload is absolutely essential to actually gaining muscle. So yeah, like yourself, I definitely take the first week as kind of just like, I go in there, I get used to the movements, normally don't really hit kind of any kind of high volumes, don't hit high kind of anywhere near failure, stay way away from failure. I'm still sore. And just that actual variation is enough. So it's great that we both link up in that way. When you do change it, how do you attack changing things? Because I know we've got kind of, we could vary the movement, we could vary the intensity, we could vary the frequency. I know recently you've come out with your aesthetic muscle plan, which is changing frequency a lot. How do you tend to go about things with your own training, or even in that plan?
Yeah, it's well, definitely a guarantee every 4 weeks I'm kind of changing. I'll change up 2 of the training techniques or tactics. There's always going to have, I find for some of the compound movements, the bigger movements, like to keep it at straight sets and just progress through increasing the weight from week to week. So I'll have an exercise or 2 that's a straight set, but then I like to throw in some different techniques, whether it's 8 sets of 8, myo reps, blood flow restriction training. Just, I mean, it's limitless. That's what I love about bodybuilding, is that there's just so many training techniques and tactics, ways that you can perform an exercise to keep it fun, to keep it exciting, and challenge your body in a different way. So I find exercise technique is probably the number one thing that I change from month to month. So it may be this month, maybe it's a bench press that I'm doing straight sets, and next month I may be doing 8 sets of 8 with the bench press. So it's tough to, I'm never always trying to progress, trying to get my bench, how much I can lift up month after month. It's this month I'll focus on getting stronger, and the next month I'm going to challenge it in a slightly different way. So that's number one. That's the main thing that I'm changing out. A lot of the compound lifts are always going to stay the same, but I may vary some of the isolation exercises that I throw in there. So if it was dumbbell flies this month, maybe it's cable flies at a different angle. If instead of a bench press, maybe I'll throw in dips. I'll just kind of vary the exercise selection a bit, but I'm always kind of keeping certain compounds, certain important lifts in there that are always going to be a part of the structure. Frequency, love changing frequency. And again, that's going to depend on the type of frequency. Every once in a while, I'd say like twice a year, I'll go on like a super high frequency plan. Some people call 5 days a week high frequency training now, but I mean, as a bodybuilder, as a bro, I'd say like 3 times a week is high frequency training, and 5 times, 6 times a week is like super crazy, insane high frequency. But I enjoy throwing that in like once or twice a year, and so I may just do a 4-week phase of that, and that's enough, man. I can't continue pushing that any longer. But something like a body part split routine where I'm training a muscle once every 4 or 5 days, that's something I may stick with for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, just depending on how I find my body is adapting to it. So if I even if I keep the frequency the same, I guarantee every 4 weeks I'll be changing exercise technique and some of the exercise selection in there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm very similar in some ways, but slightly different in other ways, in that I think because I've got a slight powerlifting kind of tilt to my training, and kind of I like power lifts. I do track weight quite a lot, but I think you're completely right in that for building muscle, kind of weight progress and like getting more kind of reps on a squat isn't necessarily the most important thing for progressing your squat, and you can actually jump around quite a lot in terms of just making changes. And the most important thing is you have to make sure is obviously that you're progressively overloading. You can look back at past phases you've done similar things, but also you've got your own fatigue. You can feel it in yourself whether you're pushing yourself hard. If you know you're pushing hard, then the body doesn't know how many reps you're doing. It doesn't know what exercise you're doing. All it knows is that fatigue it's feeling. So if you know you're pushing it, I think this is why a lot of people who don't necessarily have like complex plans or anything clever in place, they just go in there and they actually work hard. And that's an important thing to get right. I think for myself, I tend to program via blocks. They are normally 4 to 6 weeks in length. They might be a bit longer, but I have kind of probably taken slightly from the powerlifting, kind of using their structure. And I have like hypertrophy phases and strength phases most of all. And then sometimes, especially for bodybuilders, if that's who we're mainly talking about, I'll chuck in on top of kind of their hypertrophy work, which is normally kind of 8 to 12 reps. I love chucking in some of those myo reps, blood flow restriction training, really getting that pump work in. I think that used sparingly now and then can be a great tool for kind of just, as bad as it sounds, it is shocking the body, is doing something it hasn't experienced before, really chucking in loads of metabolites, really flushing kind of the muscles with loads of blood. I tend to keep frequency in terms of how many times a week I train fairly static, because for my lifestyle and a lot of the clients I have, they kind of like maybe 5 days a week and then weekends off, or 4 days a week. But that doesn't mean you can't change how many times a week you train the muscles, which I'm sure you'd agree. You could still try. I mean, I think a lot of people get trapped into thinking,
there's a lot. Yeah,
4 times a week, upper lower, that's all you can do. Whereas it's not. You could do that in so many ways.
Yeah, I'd say I love being in the gym, and my lifestyle allows it. Same with my workout partner, who he works 12-hour days, usually 5 days a week. We love being in the gym. We all love it there. It's part of our lifestyle, and it's part of our social atmosphere as well. So 5-6 days a week, I'd say half the month we're there 5 days a week, the other half 6 days a week. But like on a 5-day plan, I mean, you can do, like I said, a super high frequency plan where you're hitting every body part 5 times a week. You can do an upper lower push pull leg workout, and so you're hitting everything twice a week. You can do a body part split routine where you're hitting everything once every 4 or 5 days. You can do, if you're in 6 days a week, you could do like push pull legs. There's just, it's limitless. You can do upper lower, upper lower, upper lower. It's just, there's so many different things. That's why I really enjoy changing training frequency. Sometimes very often. Sometimes I'll change my frequency every 4 weeks, but oftentimes I'll stick with the frequency for 8 weeks at a time, or if I'm really enjoying it, 12 weeks at a time. But I just find it's something that people don't manipulate enough, and I do find for most people their schedule can allow a change in frequency. And I think that the struggle is in managing your volume per workout when you're changing your training frequency, especially for the bros like myself who are so used to blitzing a body part every single workout, and they go from training a body part once every 5, 6, 7 days, and they're like, we're training more frequently, and all right, I've heard great things about it, and muscle protein synthesis, and I'm an older lifter, a more experienced lifter, I need to elevate that muscle protein synthesis more often, spike it. But then I program the workout, and they're like, well, you only got like 2 exercises per body part. That's not good enough. This isn't an advanced workout. And it's funny what people consider an advanced workout. They just assume just destroy a body part every single time. But no, you got to be smart with managing your recovery and muscle damage when you're altering your training frequency. But I think it's a good way to
100%,
and just to add fun to your training as well. It's fun to try different training frequencies, see how your body responds, see what ones you enjoy the most. I do enjoy the high frequency training from time to time. It's not something I would enjoy all the time, but it's nice throwing it in and breaking things up every once in a while. I always thought like upper lower, that's boring. That's when you're just starting out kind of thing. But I'm telling you, when you do it right, it's a nice change from some of the other structures that we have in place.
100%. When I was doing high frequency, and I did almost feel like you said, even though the way I structure, if I am doing like body parts 3 to 4 times a week, depending on the muscle group, because I don't know if you find certain muscle groups just they cannot be trained that high frequency. I think it's to do with the kind of fiber type. If they're kind of fast twitch, they can be pounded, but they then take a long time to recover. Something like my hamstrings, if I train those anything more than kind of twice a week, they start really kind of saying hold back. So I like to, if I do the high frequency, the way I kind of manage is I kind of have an emphasis, which is normally done via volume, because for kind of bodybuilding purposes, building muscle is normally the most fatiguing thing that you've got. You can do it in a variety of ways. You could kind of, if you're doing your quads, you could go your lower, you could train them 3 times a week, maybe have your light movement as like a leg press, and then have a medium kind of heavy movement as like a front squat or something, and that would be your way of managing fatigue. But 100% managing the fatigue is the key thing. But when I did high frequency, I just kind of felt like I was not really nailing anything. And it does, I think, like yourself, especially when you come from a bit of an old bodybuilding background and you are used to nailing things fairly frequently, it kind of gets a bit frustrating in that you just can't. And it would take away from your overall volume, which is a very important aspect to growing muscle. Do you find certain body parts, do you have any muscle groups that you find you just kind of, the frequency between them is so different?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, I could hit shoulders very, very often. And I enjoy doing that. Again, not with crazy high volume every time, just a respectable volume where they're getting stimulated frequently. My biceps can't take a lot of volume. I know some people can really handle a lot of volume for the biceps, but mine just, I cramp up too much. If they take a while to recover. Quads for me take a while to recover. My hamstrings aren't too bad, so I can actually hit them a little bit more often. And if I do hit them more often, again, it's the type of exercises you're using. So you may hit them a little harder one workout, or use some compound movements that are a little more challenging. And then the next workout, it might just be like a reverse or a hyperextension or something, where working the hamstrings a little bit differently, not going too crazy. Just something that is stimulating them, but not going to cause too much muscle damage as well. And almost kind of help, I find, a little bit with the recovery, because you're getting a little bit of blood flow to those muscles as well. So kind of balancing that, the recovery, it's not just a matter of rest days and everything, but the type of exercises you're working in there. Even though my shoulders I find they can take a lot. I can stimulate them very often. If I was overhead pressing every single day, I'd destroy them. But if I do some overhead pressing one day and do some more focused, like lateral raises or rear delt flies or something, just finding the right exercises that can just provide enough some simple stimulation, and then throw some heavier compound lifts after is important.
That's totally touched on another good point, in that we're talking about kind of making sure to use muscle confusion in the right way, or variation in the right way, and that you do something for a period of time, you progress with it, and then you change it. But over the top, underneath all of this is individual difference. So different people will react better to different frequencies. They react differently to different exercises. You might really feel that pull downs in your lats, but something like, I don't know, a moto row might be awful, or the other way around. So that's something you have to take into consideration as well, and find the exercises that work for you and vary with those. And over time, make sure you're tracking your workouts, so you know how you're performing, you know what works for you, and then kind of gravitate towards that and use that as your main source. Because I think we've both just said, my hamstrings, I find they get knackered really quick, whereas you can train them with quite high frequency. So that's already a big difference just between people who train probably in a fairly similar way anyway.
Yeah. And my quads, just, it's interesting. Even between my workout partners and I, same thing. They'll be like, oh, my quads are feeling a little bit, but my hamstrings are just dying. And I'm like, oh my God, every step I'm taking, my quads are going to cramp on me. They need a little bit more recovery before I hit them again. So there's definitely individual differences. We all have our different strengths and weaknesses, and we all enjoy things differently as well too. Yeah.
I think something else, do you ever find that if you do stick with a certain exercise for too long, you start getting little niggles with that exercise? You just kind of, maybe you're doing a high bar squat and your hips, just after a while, even if you would switch to a front squat, that little variation just seems to be enough to allow you to keep progressing with it. And if you kept with the back squat, your hips would just, you'd be no good.
100%. And that's probably, I think, one of the best examples. It would be the squat and the deadlift. I deadlift, I'll vary the technique. I may do sumos this month, conventional next month, and then I may not do deadlifts again for 3-4 months, but I'll work in Romanians or maybe some good mornings or something else to kind of work that posterior chain. But deadlifts is definitely something that beats me up more than anything, and back squats definitely as well. So definitely we're always switching between a back squat and a front squat. Or if we still want to keep the back squat in there, we may go with a higher rep movement. We may do a 100 rep set with it instead, or use myo reps or something that the weight is the load is lower, so it doesn't seem to aggravate our problems. And actually, a lot of times going lighter and doing movements like that, we find we actually recover better. We heal a lot faster, and those little aches and pains kind of go away. I know for some of my workout partners, their back squat, as we're progressing on it and getting heavier and heavier, if we're in the lower rep range, I can see their range of movement getting shorter and shorter. But if the next phase we do a higher rep squats, the range gets better, they're deeper, they just feel more comfortable and confident with the movement. They start feeling the tension where it should be, rather than the lower back and upper hip area, feeling a little more quad involvement. So even if we keep the movement the same, we may vary the style of training so we can keep it in there, but kind of take away from some of the little aches and pains that can go on there.
I think that's particularly important probably for someone like a powerlifter in their off season when they're not competing, for me anyway, is the fact that a lot of the time they don't like to get away from their, like, the deadlifts. And a deadlift off the floor is incredibly taxing. It must be the most taxing exercise that possibly is. It uses the most muscles out of probably any exercise, and it's probably got the most potential to actually damage you. So for building muscle, you could argue it's not one exercise you want in there too often. And certainly, like you said, periodically putting in exercises that you can handle more volume on is probably a very good idea. And I know for myself and for other powerlifters that I coach, rather than focusing on always doing those heavy movements, or even trying to do those heavy movements or the main lifts in the higher rep ranges, I actually just switch to variants that can accommodate more volume. So I put in some hack squats, even for a powerlifter in there when they're trying to gain muscle, because I know as a bodybuilder, like hack squats are a huge exercise for them, and maybe even they don't even deadlift ever. There are no exercises you have to do. And I think a lot of people get caught up, especially you probably noticed because you've been lifting for so long. I think recently powerlifting's got so popular that people are kind of gravitating towards these lifts, and maybe sometimes it's taking away from what they could potentially do in the gym.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's kind of fun to see the powerlifting, how popular it's become, especially on YouTube. You're just seeing so many guys just busting out some huge lifts. It did get me, I never used to deadlift at all. I mean, it's just probably been the past 3-4 years that I started deadlifting, and it's fun. Like it can be fun. It's very empowering when you do it the right way. But yeah, there's a lot of us just are not built for it either. I find I am not built for lifting heavy. I can do a 430-pound deadlift occasionally for 3 reps, but I only go for that a few times a year, like maybe 2-3 months out of the year. I'll really try to push it like that, because it beats me down pretty good, but I feel great doing it. It's fun to throw it in there. And I did find that it helped a lot of my other stuff. So there's benefits, like focusing on that. It did carry over to other exercises. It is fun. It's fun lifting heavy shit once in a while, but you just got to know, like I see so many guys that because it's so popular, so many people they're trying to become power lifters, and we're just not all built for it. So I think just being smart, knowing yourself, and working within your own potential and gifts is a smart approach to take.
Certainly. I think something we've touched on that has come over and above the point of the fact you need to vary things now and then to make sure that you're kind of getting away from accommodation, which is your body's getting too used to things, so it needs something different to stimulate growth, is that the injury potential that we've got. But also something I really find with yourself, Scott, is the fact people do get bored of their exercise regimes, and they will stray and they will lack consistency if they don't enjoy it. And I think something that you do with your programming is make sure everything is fun and you love every second you're in the gym. Is there any kind of recent things you've been doing that you particularly love that kind of you think people might enjoy themselves? I think I've noticed, apart from the fact also we haven't touched on, is different exercises for different angles. So you can kind of maximally contract muscles in different areas. So it might be kind of at the long or mid range or short range. I think you've recently been doing some work with that. Is that right?
Yeah, we just revisited that this month, where we're incorporating multi-angle movements. It's something that I probably did. Well, I know it was in my programming with the Aesthetic Muscle Plan about 2 years ago is the last time that I've done this. And previous to that, it was probably 2 years before that. And that's, again, the beauty of bodybuilding. There's so many different training techniques that sometimes you forget. And there's times like I really do like including, I'd say when I'm changing up techniques, myo reps, 100 rep sets, 8 sets of 8, drop sets. Those are the kind of things I like to kind of alternate through from month to month. And then I forget about certain things. And this multi-angle thing where it's like a drop set. So for the bench press, for example, you would use an adjustable bench and you set it to like a 45-degree angle. You do 6 reps. You select a weight that can do 6 reps, leaving about a rep or 2 in the tank. And then you drop it to 20-degree angle, 6 more reps. And again, at that point, naturally, you're keeping the same weight. And the only rest you're getting is changing that angle in the bench. And then you drop it to flat, and then you drop it to a decline. So you're hitting 4 different angles there. And it seems like it should be easy when you think you just did a 24 rep set. But it's not like your typical grabbing a lighter weight and doing 24 reps, because it's like you're doing a weight that you can only do 6 reps with each time. So we've been doing that for the bench press. For rowing, you can for rowing this month, we're doing just a high pull, low pull. But in the past, I've done a straight where I'm up nice and upright doing a pull down. Then I'll angle myself back and just change the degree, and then back, and then I'll get on a seated row. So just changing different angles during a movement, just to kind of target all the different aspects of a muscle within one big giant set. That's a lot of fun. That's been a fun just change of pace. Tricep, I think the biggest shock to our muscles was the tricep extension, where we start completely upright, doing like a skull crusher, but you're upright, and then down to a 20-degree angle, flat, and then decline, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. And oh my God, our triceps, they haven't been this sore in ages. Man, it's limitless. And even like things like cluster sets. I haven't done cluster sets in like 10 years. And then I think I read an article a couple months ago, and I thought, oh my God, it sparked my memory, and adding those into my workout, where I do select a weight that you could do normally like 5 reps with, but you only do 2, rest 10 seconds, do 2, rest 10 seconds, do 2, rest 10 seconds, do 2 more. It's a great way to kind of lift a heavy weight with a short rest period and just challenge your body in a different way. Man, God, I mean, I get excited all the time, because there's always something different. A lot of times it's just old school training techniques. I guess the only newer stuff would be myo reps, blood flow restriction training. I love intraset stretching for calves. And again, certain techniques are good for certain body parts. I find getting on the calf press, doing the intraset stretching, where you select a weight that can do about 20 reps with, and you do your calf press, and then on the last rep, you hold that stretch for 30 seconds. And the first set's okay, but then you drop the weight, take off like 15% of the weight, do as many more reps as you can. So maybe between 12 and 15 reps, hold that stretch for 30 seconds. And that second set, your calves are just on fire. You just want to cry. And you do that for a total of 5 sets. You're dropping the weight 15% each time. For calves, it's just absolutely ridiculous. I find for incline dumbbell bicep curls, it can be very effective as well. And on a machine where you can do like a skull crusher, where you're a little bit more upright, holding that stretch, the triceps are just insane as well. But doing it for something like your chest or your back can be a little bit tricky. So I tend not to do that. But there's very few new training tactics that I'd use. I always kind of revisit a lot of the old school type stuff. And a lot of times, if I haven't done it in a while, I get just crazy excited about it. It's always fun, even though it's not new. It's new to me because it's been a few years since I've done it. And it's just a lot of fun to get playful with that.
I think something important is that obviously these are great techniques, and actually something new to the body means the body has to adapt and grow, and it's fantastic. But for someone who maybe is watching this and they're a bit like, whoa, Scott's talking about all these crazy techniques, how does he incorporate that into a progressive plan? I think, am I right in saying that you still have kind of a core program in place, and then these are kind of thrown in as additional kind of exciting things that you'd add in to just add that spice variety, and they're not used kind of year round, they're just thrown in now and then. Just a lot of them are just great for adding a little bits of extra volume, because you're changing slight variants, you're getting fatigued. But yeah, is that right? You still have your core kind of some sort of core program in place.
Definitely. Yeah, without a doubt. Like I said, depending on the split, if it's a body part split and you're selecting 4 exercises per body part, 2, maybe 3 will kind of be straight sets in different rep ranges. And then 1 maybe with a tech, 1 or 2 would be with one of these like intensifier techniques there. So no more. You don't want to have too much. You don't want to be doing 1 exercise straight set, 1 exercise blood flow restriction training, 1 with myo reps, 1 with interset stretching. I think that's too much confusion there. And it doesn't give you as much opportunity to change things up each month as well. So I may have 2 to 3 different training techniques in a program, and then I'll use 2 different ones, 1 or 2 different ones the following month. And people love that. They want to see a different kind of training technique. So that alone, just changing throwing in 1 or 2 different training techniques in there, it offers that excitement. Even though you might be doing straight sets for the same exercise a couple months in a row, having some sort of different variety in there definitely makes it exciting. And depending if I'm doing a more higher frequency plan, maybe one day is focused on straight sets and maybe lifting a little bit heavier there. And then the next workout, I need to go a little bit lighter. And the lighter stuff is perfect for using myo reps or intermittent stretching or different things where you can go use lighter weight, but it's a challenge. It's a different kind of lightweight lifting. I'm not just doing a high rep set. I'm doing high reps with other little short rest type tactics in there as well. So it's adding in those little lightweight stuff. It helps manage recovery. I think those little techniques can help you throw them in at the right times, and it can help you manage your recovery as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think I am exactly the same. I will use them now and then, probably not as much as you do, but I might gravitate more so as I kind of learn more and get into it a little bit more. I chuck them in kind of as an additional, as kind of some excitement, some more volume to keep the body kind of pushing forward, keep it going. But definitely always have that background program in place to make sure that kind of you're getting sufficient volume, you're kind of that pump work, which is one of the mechanisms of hypertrophy that Brad Schoenfeld talks about, but it's one of the less important ones, but it is just so much fun and it does keep you excited. And I think it's a great idea is to use kind of one technique 1 month or 1 block, then change it the next one. And that gets you very excited. And that's something I might actually look to do myself. I've definitely used blood flow restriction training. I've used myo reps myself, but not so much these other ones that you've been talking about. It's definitely not the stretching. I've never incorporated that. So that's something I might try myself. I always like to try new things out, especially before kind of handing them over to clients and things. Because sometimes they sound great on paper, but in practice you're like, huh? Especially like you said, these techniques work really well for some body parts and not so well for others. For myself, I find a lot of the time kind of my calves and stuff respond really well to these, but say my hamstrings don't really like having to do really high rep works. So I think that's important to take into account, and no doubt there's individual difference with all of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Very cool.
Awesome. So is there anything else you want to touch on at all, or should I kind of round off what we've said and we can maybe catch up another time?
Yeah, no, this was crazy exciting. I think we dished out some good information and definitely felt a lot of the passion going on. It is very, very, it's an exciting sport to be in, a recreational sport. I do think it's a sport. It's a different kind of sport, but I enjoy it. It's a fun activity that definitely passionate about, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my insights with you today. It's been a lot of fun.
No, yes, brilliant to have you on. And actually, yeah, for sure, if you've got kind of your website and things like that, I'll put them in the description box below, but definitely can people reach you on Facebook? Do you have, I know you've got Instagram as well, and obviously the Modern Muscle podcast as well, but you've got all of that going on. Yeah,
I'd say probably the best thing to do would be to visit the website metabolicmasterpiece.com, because you can find links to my Facebook profile, Instagram profile. I'm on Twitter a little bit, but and YouTube, definitely always cranking out the YouTube videos, kind of my favorite thing to do. So catch up with me there, and email, contact, whatever it is, it's all there at metabolicmasterpiece.com.
Sweet. I mean, I definitely recommend you guys check out Scott's YouTube channel, I should have said, because you think these sound exciting, Scott talking about them. Imagine actually watching him do all of them, and then you can actually learn and do them yourself. And I think I need to go and revisit them so I can potentially put some into my program, because I think, as we've discovered, muscle confusion used in the right way, kind of, I like to call it directed muscle confusion, that can get rid of the rule of kind of accommodation. Your body gets very used to things. Use it in the right way, you can spur progress, which is, like we said, kind of every kind of month or so. Use a different intensity, a different frequency, a different kind of exercise. It doesn't have to be all of them. It can be a subtle change, and you can really keep spurring progress going. The worst thing is doing the same thing over and over again. Like, I think it was Einstein, was it? I forget who said that's insanity. Do the same thing over and over again, and you achieve the same kind of no result. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Scott. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And yeah, I'll keep up with everything you're doing. I love your podcast. You touched on some great. Cheers. So that is the end, everyone, and take care.
Thanks a lot.